And why would we ever, when we're trying to punish a child, take away the one thing that makes them concentrate, which is recess?
Done simply by just changing your environment of how you are positioning your body. So ultimately, if that's what works for an adult, why wouldn't we want our children to be able to excel?
And that's so exactly the best
Yeah.
chair on the market is an uncomfortable
I
chair.
think traditionally it's kids are sitting in the structured desk or at a
Mhm.
table with some random chairs. And in this day and age, with the technology and all of the improvements, we shouldn't be sitting in the same seats that we were sitting back in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s.
Autism, they wiggle a lot in their chairs, they stand up a lot, they move a lot. The reason why is that stimulates the brain.
That whenever we get into this C-shaped position, right, that's kind of like sleep, that's rest and digest, that shuts down our learning centers. So
Yep.
anytime that we are sat into this position, again, everything rolls forward, that just decreases the learning capacity.
Everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Skip Wyss, and I am here as always with Dr. Julie Wyss. Dr. Julie, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing all right. Just trying to figure this stuff out. Dr. Julie, it's so nice to come off of a podcast that we had just done on helping kids with backpack safety, with getting themselves prepped for school, and really helping to get this school year off on the right path. Dr. Julie, I have something else I'd like to add in on this time around.
All right.
So we're talking study ergonomics for your children. Okay. And you know that ergonomics is a hot button. Everybody talks about ergonomics at their work. Parents talk about it all the time, but we don't actually ever think about the ergonomics that our kids are put through every school year. And it's a big thing.
Yeah, and I think traditionally it's kids are sitting in the structured desk or at a table with some random chairs. And in this day and age, with the technology and all of the improvements, we shouldn't be sitting in the same seats that we were sitting back in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s.
Exactly. And those ergonomics, the same thing they talk about in the workforce, the same thing, hold true with our children at school. So why are we not going into our child's ergonomics while they're at school to make sure they have the best study environment possible, or if they have the best study environment at home for our homeschooling families out there that listen? This is all super important. So the first thing I want to touch on is desk setup. We'll get into furniture and chairs in just a minute, but I want to talk about the desk setup for the child. Like, how do we position things to best suit that child's work environment for their ergonomics? So like in an office setting, it's where do we put the computer screen? Where do we put the keyboard? Where do we put how they're trying to read stuff? Dr. Julie, what would you consider the best ergonomics for actually desk setup for a child?
So I think this depends on maybe what grade your child is in. If they're on a tablet or desktop computer or a laptop. But the biggest thing is we want to make sure that that computer monitor is directly in front. So if we are reading something, if we're doing something, that it is up at eye level, that we're not looking down at it. Tablets, right? A lot of people are going to lay them down on their desk, but we want to have them straight up so we're looking straight at it. We may need to use some of those old textbooks or phone books to bring that tablet or that computer up. The biggest thing is that we want to make sure that it's straight in line with our vision.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. We've talked about in our past like text neck episodes and different postural things is having those neck saver wedges or book wedges to bring that child's book or laptop up. They actually make little foam things that you can set the computer on, but bringing that up to eye level, right? And it's a simple test. Like watch your kid when they're sitting there. And if you notice that they are constantly looking down or that posture is slumping coming towards, we need to bring that computer back up or that book up to eye level so they sit up and back versus slumping forward. And that also rings true to when they're in the classroom. And there's nothing wrong with going into the classroom, watching your child get set up, what those desks actually look like, and have them kind of show them how to organize their desk from a study perspective. Now, if they're 5 years old, hopefully they're not stuck at a desk, But if you have somebody that's 4th, 5th, 6th grade, it's a good conversation to have with the teachers as well, because the teachers don't really 100%, I would say, consider that at times, and that has a lot of effect on it. So now let's segue into, from setting up the desk properly for proper studying, let's segue into actual furniture itself. So the desk itself, because a lot of these desks are just fixed in one position, and the seat is fixed in one position, and that doesn't always promote proper hygiene or posture.
Right. So, I mean, movement is key. And there is no reason, I mean, this again may depend upon the school. If you're at home, then it's kind of like no excuses. But ideally, if we can get into a standing work desk situation,
Yeah.
that would be ideal. So, if that is raising up, if it's a standalone desk, if that's raising that up, if it is, some people have like the conference tables, it's figuring out how we can bring everything up to that child's levels. Then we can be, when we are on our feet, that allows for that brain to be able to process information a lot quicker. That just opens up everything to be able to absorb. And then, if it's, we're memorizing something, we're remembering something, it just completes that whole circuit. So anytime that we have the opportunity to be able to do anything standing as a standing work desk, I think would be ideal.
Well, there's a lot of neurology involved in that, but the biggest thing you can put in your head is that the more your butt moves, the more your brain processes, the more productive you're going to be, and the more productive your child is. Now, in the workplace, they're going to talk about standing work desks all the time, and that is something that should be brought into the classroom, that your child is standing. We'll commonly see kids that have neuro disorders, neurodeflective disorders, ADD, ADHD, autism. They wiggle a lot in their chairs, they stand up a lot, they move a lot. The reason why is that stimulates the brain. It's no different in a normal functioning child or adult that doesn't suffer from these issues, that they need just as much movement. And your brain needs movement. We've talked about this before, but movement is absolutely key. And having a standing work desk, or getting your child standing up for some of their studies, extremely important. And guess what? If they're standing up, they actually stay in place. They don't want to talk to their neighbors because their brain's focusing on what they're doing. It's focusing on their posture. And then we're getting this amazing cross coordination in the brain, from movement to eye development to lingual skills coming in, to getting that entire brain running and functioning and talking to itself and talking to the entire body, which it's meant to do, which then stimulates healing function. It stimulates a ton of stuff. 50% of the nerves that make up the spinal cord are for movement, and they directly feed the brain. And of that 50%, the majority of them are in the neck. So if we're stuck in this static position with our neck, constantly looking down and not up, not supporting the curve in our neck, but more importantly, not supporting the ability to turn our heads left to right, that changes how our brain's going to function, and that movement feeds the brain. So if we don't have the movement, guess what? The brain doesn't get fed like it's supposed to, and that's not okay.
I've never seen, I know a handful of people that can sleep standing up, but right, if your child's struggling, like, let's get up on our feet and get some movement.
Exactly. And let's talk really quick about chairs. You had mentioned this about a C-shaped child, your child being C-shaped. If they look at the chair, if the chair is C-shaped, guess what the child's going to look like?
It's gonna do that same type of posture. So it's the same thing at home. Like if you're sitting in the lazy boy, right? What was your posture? Like you immediately go into a C type position. And all the research, we've known this over the 15 years that we've been working with kids and with education, that whenever we get into this C-shaped position, right, that's kind of like sleep, that's rest and digest, that shuts down our learning centers. So anytime that we are sat into this position, again, everything rolls forward, that just decreases the learning capacity, that decreases the interaction. It's really putting an impedance on how that brain can function. So if we can be on a ball chair, if we can have a movable chair, roller chairs, I mean, some teachers are like, absolutely not, right? But ultimately, we need something to be able to keep that body, that lower part of the body, to be able to keep moving. It's going to keep them a little bit more busy, right? So, and we understand that, but ultimately, for the brain centers to be able to just grow and develop like they should, We just need to be able to have that little bit of movement. And so the ball chairs are super great for that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you remember back to chiropractic school? And we're sitting there, and those chairs were horrible. Chiropractic school, and the chairs were horrible. Those
But I
fixed
think they were made
positions.
to be horrible because
Yeah,
nobody wanted to sit in them, right? So then we were
exactly.
up and we were moving.
And that's so exactly the best
Yeah.
chair on the market is an uncomfortable chair.
Mhm.
And the reason why is it constantly makes you move, it constantly makes you shift, and it doesn't allow you to slump, let your back drop,
Mhm.
and change everything. Because most of you out there, you're one subluxation or misalignment in your low back from having constipation or diarrhea. And nobody likes to be backed up or exploding in their chair, one or the other. So you can't afford to have these subluxations in your back and in your spine because they're going to affect your health negatively. And if we can take that into consideration when a child is young in development, when they're in school, we will see miles and miles of improvement early on because we just have them in the right ergonomics and in the right chairs.
Take it from an adult, right? If you're
Mhm.
sitting at a desk and you're over your computer and you're typing like this, figure out a way that even for half a day that you can raise your computer up, get to a seating position and open everything up, your productivity will increase. You'll be that much more focused. Like if you have a to-do list that you're never finishing, you're going to be able to excel in winning the day and getting all of those things done simply by just changing your environment of how you are positioning your body. So ultimately, if that's what works for an adult, why wouldn't we want our children to be able to excel? Depending on what year that they're in, school is tough. It can be super
It
tough. So
is
if we
tough.
can give them
Yes.
these simple tools to be able to excel throughout their day, they're going to be just lifelong learners.
Again, we see this too with desk development in corporations.
Mhm.
They've actually went as far as developing a desk with a treadmill on the bottom of it, so the person can sit there and walk while they're working. So why in the hell would we fixate our kids into one position when they need more movement more than an adult?
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast altogether. So why is it okay that as an adult we need this, but as a kid we make them sit in a fixed position? And then furthermore, we'll get into this. These kids need exercise. They have to move. And why would we ever, when we're trying to punish a child, take away the one thing that makes them concentrate, which is recess? So when a child doesn't complete their homework or doesn't get things done on time, the most common thing taken away from a child for reinforcement, which is negative, which doesn't work that well, is you take them out of recess.
I think a better solution, and we understand we understand consequences,
Mhm.
right? But let's just let this play out. If you're the teacher, you take away that time for them to be able to get that movement, which
Mhm.
then turns that brain, right? If it's been shut off, it's been sitting all day, and then we finally get to recess and we're able to move. When they come back to their desks, they are that much more alert and ready to jump into whatever that curriculum
They
is.
are.
We take that away, and instead they're sitting in that slump position. They haven't been able to get the wiggles. They haven't been able to get that
Mhm.
movement. It decreases that the brain power. It decreases that learning ability, which then they're going to start acting out in different ways.
Yep.
My suggestion then, okay, if we need that consequence, is there something else that we can take away or remove from the classroom? If everybody's going to technology, then maybe instead of them reading that lesson on their iPad, maybe they have to share with somebody, or maybe we break the old textbooks back out, which could feel really detrimental for that child, but ideally that is much better anyways. But let's bring them back out the textbook, something else that they can still be able to go and get that movement. We see that as a reward to go and do that,
Mhm.
but it is vitally important for the health of that child.
Yeah, if you want better students, you make them move more. If you want to work better in your workplace, you move more. Like that's what has to happen.
Learning is best done on the movement. Like I
Mhm.
still remember back to high school, and if we're talking about memorizing things or just being able to focus on things when we can get movement, I still remember high school, right? Learning Spanish, learning language, and we were marching through the hallway
Oh wow.
chanting the
Yeah.
alphabet.
Heck yeah.
But still to this day, like I can remember that perfectly.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So anytime that we have the opportunity to be able to allow our children to be able to move and take in a lesson, it is just going to make it that much more memorable. It's going to ingrain, but it allows their brain to then process that, ingrain it, to then be able to have it come back out for a test or to be able to build that knowledge foundation from that point.
So you talked a little bit about this, and let's talk about screen time then, because it segues right into this. Teachers, schools themselves are going to using more MacBooks, they're using more Chromebooks, they're using more iPads and tablets. So what's happening is we're getting our children constantly inundated with blue
Bombarded.
light. And that really does negatively affect them, their eyesight and their vision. What are some things then the parents can do to help counteract that blue light coming into their child's visual
Yeah,
field?
if tablets and computers are not an option, like that's how they're
Mm-hmm.
learning, we understand that that's the technology of the world, right?
Yep.
So in place of that, if we're going to be using that, we need to make sure that we have the filters
Mm-hmm.
on and that we're using them on the tablets or the computers. So the blue light filters that are on there, sometimes they're eye relief, sometimes that's what they're called. You can actually get like a screen protector on your tablet or your screen, but also they come in all different colors now, blue light glasses.
Yeah, these are
So
cheaters because these help me read a little bit,
everybody
but
should
yeah.
be having these. And the common question is like, well, my child already has glasses or I have glasses. You can now get your corrective lenses with blue light filters in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's vitally important for eye health. But I mean, we've gone through this in cascades of, it's not just disrupting our day and how we're thinking and programming. It's changing how we are sleeping.
Yep.
And as soon as we disrupt our sleep patterns, that means that our immune system is decreasing. That means that we're not able to refocus. Our energy is depleted, fatigue, anxiety, depression,
Mm-hmm.
all of the whole gamut of things. And all it comes back to, I was just looking at my computer and I was overstimulated by the blue light and then I can't sleep at night.
Yeah, you hit that, you knocked that out of the park. Dang, that was fantastic because that blue light does cause overstimulation to our optic centers in our brain. It overstimulates the visual and it overstimulates the auditory sensors in our brain too. So our brain is then overstimulated, which exhausts it, which then it requires it to be stimulated again to work. Which it seems like a really backwards way to think about it, but if you go back and listen to our sleep podcast, we hit on this very, very hard because it's a bad cascade to begin with. And if we're adding this blue light in, it's not good. So limiting that screen time. So when they get home, get them out, get them playing. We've talked about this. Putting together family exercise or activity programs to do when your kids get home. It's best for you as an adult too, because you need to get out and walk and move, especially you're at a desk job. If you're at a desk job, you have to move. That's the only way your brain's going to stimulate itself. And that's the thing is that if you have a hard time sleeping at night, you haven't moved enough during the day. You
Yeah,
haven't had enough sun exposure and light
we
exposure.
need the movement, and then it's just finding the activity that everybody likes to do. And once you start to get in a routine, some of the kids may be like, oh, I don't want to, but if you're like, let's go and do it, everybody feels better. And then there's gonna be days when you don't want to do it. Then we need the kids to be stepping in of like you said, and if it's to go out and just do a walk or a sports or a hike later on, if it's indoor, if it's board games, right? Biggest thing being we can't have the tablets, we can't be plugged into our cell phones, especially if we're on that all day long.
Yeah, take that technology break at night. It's just not needed. Let's talk about one other thing then. Let's talk about exercises because we have a lot of parents that do come in and ask, are there postural exercises? Are there things that we can be doing at home when they're not getting adjusted or when they're in school to really help drive better posture? And it all comes back to the neck and the low back with these kiddos. And it's getting proper neck posture in because like you said, if they're C-shaped, if they're always coming forward, that's going to change the curvature of their neck, right?
Yeah, so I like when I go into the schools and I talk about like how detrimental being on the tablet is, and everybody thinks
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, but I say picture a pool noodle and balancing a bowling ball on the top of that. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. But that's literally your head on your neck. And so just looking at those two sizes together, like your neck is constantly working nonstop. The only time that it's not is when you're sleeping. But if you're not sleeping, right, we're not getting that reparative, that healing time. So as we're staring down at our phone, our muscles in the back of our neck have to work overtime to try and keep our head upright.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, those muscles are gonna they're gonna fatigue. They're gonna want to give out,
They're going to
which
get
then
weak.
means these front muscles start to become overdeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then it's going to be like when you tell your child to sit up or bring their head back, it's going to hurt because now these muscles are
Yeah, they
shortened.
physically can't.
So that's when we talk about exercises, sometimes it's honestly of, okay, let's just try to bring our ears over our shoulders, but let's also try and rotate our neck, right? Of being able to look back and forth pain free, right? So if you're driving and you're trying to look for your blind spot and you can't do that, that's a red flag. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
huge
That's a
problem.
huge thing.
Safety on the road, but also, okay, that should be like, okay, I can't turn all the way that way. What the heck is going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if our kids are already experiencing that, that's a huge red flag. So some of those exercises of just rotating our head both ways, getting that rotation and then looking up as well so we can get some rotation and extension. The biggest thing being is we need to make sure that our eyes are back on the horizon and looking around and actually seeing the world.
I love that. I really do, because that's exactly what we have them do. And then the other exercise I would have them add in is at night when they're home before they go to bed, they can lay with their head off their bed and just go into full extension and just sit there with their head off their bed for about 10 to 30 seconds and do it a few times before they go to bed. It stretches and elongates all of these muscles on the front hand part of the neck that get them to stretch out, relax from the day, and really help them with normal neck posture. It's the same thing with their low back. So they can sit there with their low back and they can do pelvic tilts and then side to side motions while keeping their shoulders straight. They can do that in their class. They can do that back and forth. Like, I highly recommend teachers take a movement break and just go through these postural exercises with your students, because these things will drive better posture, but even more importantly, they drive better learning. And if we can stimulate a better learning environment, we have healthier, happier kids and smarter kids. So important. That's what we're trying to achieve, right? As a society, healthier, smarter children that are happy. And guess what? That's the whole mission to this podcast, is having happy, healthy families and getting that worldwide. So if you know anybody that wants to hear from us, share this to them. Share them these podcasts, because you know it's going to help them. If it's helped you, it will help somebody you know. Give us a like, send us a subscribe, and just be a part of this world with us, because we would love to have you. And if you're missing episodes, download our app in the App Store.
We're in the Apple or the Android store under Prime Family Chiropractic. You'll see our little P logo, but there is tons of resources in there. But the biggest thing, our podcast.
Yeah, you'll never miss an episode. So, Dr. Julie, do you have anything else you want to add to this one?
That's it.
All right, we'll see you all next week. Have a great day, everybody. Go out there, get it done. Bye, everyone.